Joined now by Congressman Adam Kinzinger, Republican from Illinois, who's also a pilot in the Air National Guard and fought in Iraq as well. Good to have you here today, Congressman.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
You know, obviously, there's so much concern out there over this deal. When you look at this letter and the people that have signed on to it, you have to wonder whether or not this registers with the president.
Look, this is like the who's who of people that understand foreign policy, that understand how people think in the Middle East, that understand the long game that Iran and other countries play in the Middle East. The president has talked to us, frankly, in Congress through his, through John Kerry and others, and said, look, this is a 10-year. This is the only way to guarantee that Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons for 10 years. The problem is it doesn't. It may guarantee, maybe it does, that Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons in 10 years, but it also guarantees that Iran does get nuclear weapons in 10 years, because when this agreement runs out, they're basically free to do whatever they want. And now they've had billions of dollars invested in their economy that they've been able also to invest in destabilizing Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, that we've seen all around the globe. This is a bad deal. And think about it, in international politics terms, 10 years is not that long. I mean, 10 years ago, President Bush announced the surge in Iraq. It doesn't seem like that long ago.
No, it really doesn't. You're right. It's like a blip, 10 years in history when you look at what can happen. So let's just take a look at a poll that we have here that asks the American people what they think about this deal. Will the deal stop Iran from building nuclear weapons? 63% believe that that is not likely, and yet the president has told us that that's an absolute fundamental element of this deal. He says, the most important thing to him is that it ensure that Iran cannot build a nuclear weapon, and yet 63% of the people in polls said they don't believe that.
Well, that poll goes to show me that the American people know exactly what they're talking about, first off. Secondly, here's the other thing. Not only is it not going to guarantee that Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons, it's going to guarantee that neighboring countries do. For instance, Saudi Arabia, that's very worried about Iran and Iran's meddling, now knows if this deal is signed. And by the way, I really believe this administration will sign a deal no matter what, and I hope I'm wrong. But when Saudi Arabia looks at that and says, well, now they're guaranteeing that Iran gets the nuke in 10 years, Saudi Arabia is saying, well, we have to get a nuke within 10 years now, and so they're going to be able to develop their own nuclear program up to the level of what we've allowed Iran to do, because there's no way we can stop our best ally when we won't stop our worst enemy. And we also know they have options on existing nuclear weapons in other places around the globe. So this is the beginning of a nuclear arms race, if this deal is signed, in exactly the part of the world you don't want a nuclear arms race.
All right, let me ask you a big picture question here, because we talk about and the terrorist entities that they're aligned with in the Middle East. And then you have ISIS and all of these other Islamic radical groups and the larger entities that they have certain alliances with in some of these countries, some of which have been allies in the past and some of which we have rocky relationships with right now under this administration. So it appears that the administration is saying, look, we think that long-term Iran is the better side of this deal for the United States. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Well, I think there's truth to that. The administration is starting to think that. But I will tell you, about half of the people killed in Iraq, in the war in Iraq, were killed either directly or indirectly by Iran. Iran is no ally of the United States. And anybody that gets sucked into believing that somehow Iran is our best bet, you know what I think the best bet is for the Middle East? Strong American leadership. And we can do that without 200,000 or 300,000 troops like the president puts up as a straw man. But we can do it with having moral leadership and, frankly, bringing these players together like Saudi Arabia, like Jordan, to say, you know what, you have to control the Middle East, you have to increase stability, but also understanding the United States has capabilities that no other country has, nor can other countries have. For instance, Jordan is the size of Illinois without Chicago, and so the belief that somehow Illinois without Chicago can do what the United States has the capability to do is just not realistic.
Yeah. All right, Congressman, thank you very much. Always good to get your thoughts.
You bet.
We'll see you next time.
That's great. Thanks.